We're going to be handling the questions and answers with two of us, myself and Jessica. I'll just kick off the questions. There were lots of them, maybe the best one to start with would be, you talked a lot about culture, and you showed a lot of figures on the operational performance, the due date performance, the speed and all that. Have you made any attempts to measure the cultural elements? Have you tried to quantify that in any way?
So I will take that question. It's Johan Steyn speaking. So you would have seen in Andre's portion of the presentation, we referred to GRIT International, or the GRIT methodology of developing the sounders culture. That is a very interesting reading. I highly recommend that you research the methodology and the learnings of the GRIT International system. The answer is yes, Philip. It is in fact possible to measure culture through a systematic approach. There are, if I recall correctly, 7 different cultures that can be identified and can be described. You can also describe the influence that a certain culture would have on another culture, for example, or an individual bearing a certain kind of culture on another person. So it is measurable. We can really share a lot of detail there in terms of also how a group culture is measured before an intervention, then going through an intervention, and what does the group culture look like after the intervention. So yes, very interesting learnings that we've made. We've worked with really a top lady by the name of Joanne Wilson, excuse me, and of course it's an internationally accredited system as well. Definitely worth researching that further.
I will continue with an easy question that was asked a couple of times. How long did it take to achieve the results you shared? And if I can complete with another question, how many iterations of finding and resolving manufacturing bottlenecks using the 5 focusing steps did you go through to obtain the results?
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. This is Andre replying to that question. I think basically we've started that TOC journey roughly in about 2014. So it's been quite a journey, and we're basically now in year 7 of our TOC implementation, and probably still learning and still getting new golden TOC nuggets as we progress. I think as everybody they start reading the goal, and basically the goal is based on a manufacturing TOC solution and implementation. So we basically started off in 2014-15 in our factory. Basically, like we alluded in our presentation, with critical constraint management, 5 focusing steps, drum buffer rope, which brought us roughly about to 2016-17. Then basically we actually gone on to do the logical thinking course in 2017 with Bill Detmer. We loved it so much that we probably brought Bill to South Africa, bribing him with a safari, and actually getting him to also teach the methodology of logical thinking to our top managers at Aerosud. And basically that opened up the whole new chapter for Aerosud, because by applying the logical thinking tools to really a broad scope of topics, you can really exploit a lot of constraints in your systems. Another implementation that we started in 2017 was specifically with Marris Consulting on critical chain project management. Also a long learning process. We actually adopted it very quickly within 2 to 3 months. And then we basically started running projects. As we actually got some insight into projects by doing Pareto of our buffer penetration, we realized what is the real constraints in our industrialization area. So it helped us to focus on what to exploit as a constraint in our industrialization areas. So yes, we've been busy on a various number of topics over the past 7 years. And I think, like you saw, we've just sort of revisualized our goal tree and basically constantly changing our current reality dynamically and trying to stay agile on top of business.
Sorry, there's a slight risk that we'll cross questions between Jessica and I because we're not in the same room and all that. There are, I stopped counting, 30 questions, so we won't have time to deal with them all. I like this one because it's very much, I assume, the mindset and the preoccupation of many people listening to this webinar. It came up in various forms in your question. The question is about, what did you talk about? What were the discussions between the moment you read the goal and when you started doing it, right? So this period of 2008 to whatever it is, 2012, 2014, when things really ramped up. Because, as I say, I think many people who decide to watch this webinar are probably there. Let's just say they've read the goal, they've started their discussions, and, well, since you've gone through it all, how would you describe that period of between reading the goal and start doing it?
Yeah, it's Johan Steyn taking that one. Probably a period of procrastination, I think, is probably the best way to put it. It was clear reading the goal that one have to maximize throughput, minimize investment, and keep a keen eye on operating expense. The trouble that we had at the time is probably for about 2 years, we did not really know how to start or where to start. To be honest, we had 1 or 2 consultant, I would say, excursions that did not really spark it off with us, sadly, and that didn't help us either. Then we started to work with somebody that is a TOC expert in South Africa, and we started to walk a path with him. And then in that process, we were essentially exposed to some of the tools that is in the TOC toolkit, such as, for example, developing a strategy and a tactics tree for the company. The honest truth is that the 137 odd page strategy and tactics started to lay the foundation of what we needed. But the fact is that we were probably not fully understanding or appreciating the extent to which we have to implement certain specific tools, such as, for example, CCPM or dynamic buffer management in the supply chain. So it took us probably another 2 years before we could fully appreciate what these elements were, what they were supposed to do, and how to bring them into a digital integration and a practical usage point of view. Because if you cannot make it the standard operating procedure for your people, the single priority for your operators on the shop floor, or the highest priority for supply chain to solve a shortage so that you can have a full kit released. Unless you have the tools to give you that focus, you can speak the language, but you cannot really practice the language.
Okay. Andre, I have a question for you, actually asked by a couple of people, saying that TOC is commonly associated with a top-down behavior. How long did it take to involve everyone in the company, the operators and so on, and how do you involve them in the work process?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. I think that's an excellent question. And I think pretty early in this TOC journey, we realized that change management is going to play a very critical role. So I think the 2 elements that assist us to do the change management in Aerosud, the one was firstly the culture management, because as soon as you establish a sound culture with management, that is willing to change and obviously are starting to listen at sound solutions and not who's right, but what is right, then suddenly it becomes a real dynamic drive in the company for the rest of the company to drive when management actually can set that example. So through Grid International, the whole management team participated in a change management course where we actually identified what does a sound culture look like and how does management should behave adopting this sound culture. So that is the one element of top management taking change control into their own hands. And then secondly, obviously, you have to take this change right into the company. And I think through our change partners, which we call the Clokomela partners, we set up really, call it easy to understand TOC language in training and TOC methodologies, which we actually train these change partners in Aerosud. And it isn't, call it, it was a voluntary system, so it's any person that was actually able to sort of learn this methodology and culture, and they were actually used to spread this, call it gospel, into the rest of the company. And then we literally have call it a contact session once a day with a group of 20 people, where we would encourage certain training modules on culture and TOC. And by actually using these two elements of change management in management itself, and obviously exploiting this into the rest of the company through change agents, I think we actually got a nice grip on TOC as a company culture.
If I can add, this is Philip Marris, if I can add to Andre's answer, just because I can see it from the outside, maybe more objectively. We've been discussing how they did it, but there's a lot of true, profound conviction and heart in their culture, and you feel it just when you enter the premises, and of course when you walk around the shop floor, the offices and stuff. There is a company culture that's you can nearly touch, and you feel the attachment that everybody has to the company, and therefore the role that they have within that company. It's something that one feels very strongly when one visits the company.
Okay, thank you. I have a question regarding the use of goal tree. How did you use a goal tree for risk management?
All right, this is Andre basically answering this question. I think the beauty of a goal tree is we used a company goal tree as a global company goal, but what we realized is that each department basically has their own goal tree, which we call a nested goal tree. So in order to support the company's total goal, we've got a nested goal tree of a department that supports that ultimate goal. Now within each department having a goal tree, they basically have, say, a goal tree and 3 critical success factors in order to achieve their department goal. And what's really easy from here is that starting a risk management process is always asking the person, what is your risks? And usually he struggles to verbalize this right off the bat. And I think what the goal tree assists you of doing is actually verbalizing that first 3 or 4 risks in your department or your company by saying my goal is this and my critical success factors in order to achieve the goal is A, B, and C. Then the person can say, okay, but what is the risk of not achieving this specific goal or this critical success factor, and what is my constraint of not achieving that? And by just taking the opposite, you actually help the person express what is his risks, because ultimately our risk is not achieving the goal, because that is the ultimate survival of the company.
Okay, thank you. This question was asked also a couple of times. Did you launch any kind of continuous improvement program before TOC, such as Six Sigma, Lean, and so on? And how do you evaluate the interaction between TOC, Lean, and Six Sigma?
So I'll take that one. It's Johan Steyn. So we became involved with the Boeing company in 2000, which was really the first opportunity that we had to get into serialized production. Through that engagement and through the learnings we made, I would say in the first 10 years of our true production environment, we were almost exclusively exposed to lean methodologies and lean improvement, cell management structures, the normal 5S, 8 wastes, or I think those days it was called 7 wastes, and the likes. So we had already a fairly well developed lean culture and cell-based manufacturing, where we have already at the time when we started with TOC, did some work on SMED and things like that. So we had a fairly good foundation from a lean perspective. We have never really exhaustively gone the Six Sigma route, with a couple of exceptions in certain process control areas. So the answer is we knew a few things about lean, and we continue with the interaction between lean and TOC. We absolutely see no conflict. It goes around using the right tool at the right time, at the right place. So we could integrate the two fairly easily in our environment.
And there's a question that came that was very close to that. So you with Boeing, you discovered or had lean imposed, and you then read the book, and the question that came up several times was, what seduced you in the theory of constraints?
I'll give my answer, and then my colleagues can give maybe their perspectives. I think it's the simplicity. For me, it has always been the simplicity of reading the goal, and when I close the book, there's 3 things that I need to do. That for me is the power thereof.
Yeah, this is Andre. I think basically maybe I haven't advocated in my slides enough, but I think on the one slide, we basically showed the match between TOC and the aviation market, and I think basically it actually complements each other to a T. I mean, like I said, theory of constraints has an excellent credibility of increasing your throughput, reducing your inventory, and optimizing your flow through the factory, which you need in an aviation market of these days. And like Johan also said, it's actually the simplicity of using the tools and applying that principles just it's actually a shame that not more people use this simplistic tool and opt for more complex tools.
Jeff speaking. I think what seduced me into TOC is also the simplicity of the whole philosophy and the approach. Something that promotes flow across value streams, virtually cradle to grave. A single prioritization methodology across product ranges, value streams, and everybody can easily understand it. It's something that you can roll out to the shop floor, and you ask somebody, okay, how much red work do you have? How much green work do you have? They don't have to do math or anything. Everybody can relate to the real simplicity of it. And on top of that, the other one called buffers. Just understanding the buffer and the impact of buffers is really very straightforward, and you can teach anybody fairly quickly how to apply that. So again, simplicity in terms of those attributes of TOC that you can, in a very short time, implement and roll out in an environment.
Would any of the 3 of you, this is Philip Marris again, like to comment on, to pick up on that last point, buffers? What makes you so good is not only do you put these buffers in so you have a robust system, but you don't fall asleep on those buffers. There is this passion to do it better and better, and therefore reduce the size of your buffers and get faster and faster and faster. Would you recognize that? As to say, install buffers so that you know on a day-to-day level things happen and work, without requiring micromanagement and so forth. But then there's this leadership and this vision to improve, which means that you're on the medium term, you're reducing those buffers in continuous improvement.
Yes, I think so, Philip. TOC has its principles, but and the visibility mechanisms that we've implemented allows us to have full visibility across the functions in our company, and it's a standardized function. So whether we talk to supply chain and raw material buffers, we talk about red, yellow, and green, and lead time. And within the company, the passion of the people understanding something that is very simple also helps tremendously. And this is a top-down and bottoms-up combination. It is part of the culture. We talk about buffers. We talk about flow. We talk about those attributes on an ongoing basis. It's becoming or has become a way of life. And Poogie is another way of life. It is continuously closing the loop, finding out what are impacting on our CCR, our capacity constraint resource. Why can we not get the flow? What can we do to solve the problem? And that again is back to the simplicity of TOC. One, let's call it a bottleneck for a lack of a better word, one area to focus on, upstream and downstream, and everybody understands it. It is not something that, okay, today you focus on this one and tomorrow you focus on something else. It is the ability to have focused interventions, focused management that is one of the softs of TOC, I would say.
Okay. Thank you. Then again, a question that came up a couple of times. Where should a company start if they want to implement TOC? And I will complete with another one, which is how will you maintain and sustain the TOC within the company?
So it's Johan Steyn. I'll take a shot at it. I would recommend that you should not read the goal and then procrastinate another 2 years like we've done. Try and attend good quality sessions or seminars like the one that we are doing now. I'm hoping Philip does this for a living. I think it's important to surround yourself with experts. You need to be selective. You need to be very critical of what do you want to achieve, and work with people that you relate to, that you can work with. I mean, there's always the chemistry issue. It's important to have a good advisor. In our own experience, we are the type of people that like to internalize things like this. So we have never committed to a long-term consulting role. We have developed some very clever digital tools, we believe, internal to our company that makes us, I think, different in many respects. It's also true that you cannot necessarily buy the software by just trying, even if you had the money to do that. So our opinion would be to work with somebody that has done it before, to ask advice. I think practically, even from Aerosud's perspective, we would be happy to work with people that want to implement TOC in general. I repeat what Andre said before. We are not experts and we are not fundamentally consultants, but we have really good experience in deploying these tools in various scenarios, down in our supply chain, in manufacturing, in small companies with less than 40 people that have essentially Excel as a system. And we could deploy a supplier portal for them where they could really see the priorities the way that we see it. We could deploy it into our supply chain where we can show a big company what is the priorities that is really required on our purchase orders with a lead time of 100 or 200 days. And it's amazing that you can actually deploy tools like that if you engage the people with the right story and you give them the tools that's easy to use and don't have to have big software implementations that take years and never deliver.
Yeah, I would imagine that, just to wrap up what Johan has said, is it is what Nike says: decide and do it. Find yourself a guide or an advisor and ask questions. It is a journey. It is not as if you have a recipe and you'll bake the cake in 2 hours and do nothing. Decide and launch.
If I can, this is Philip Marris, if I can add to that, you saw, I believe, a question that was asked, would you like a web conference with Aerosud? Would you like to visit them? I don't want these webinars to sound like a sales pitch for consulting. So my remark for anybody who's within travel distance of Pretoria is to get in contact with Aerosud, and this what they're doing is you can feel the passion of it, the strength of it. You'll catch the virus, to be topical, and you'll start doing it. I mean, it's so much more impactful when one industrial company says to another, "This is what we've done and how we do it," than whatever a consultant can say. So, for anybody who has the great chance of living within travel distance of Aerosud in Pretoria, just ask them if you can come and have a visit, and you'll catch the bug, and you'll start doing it. There's no other possible outcome if you get to actually shake their hands and visit. Or right, shaking their hands right now is not the right thing to do. Actually, just visit within social distancing and stuff, and you'll get the bug even with from 2 meters away.
Okay, thank you. So I think it will be the last question. And to finish, what in your eyes, will be the next steps to continue to grow the company? And I will combine with the fact that now that the market, aeronautic aviation market, is in a kind of crisis, would you consider going to other industry to propose your core competencies to different sectors?
Yes, I'll take that one. It's Johan Steyn speaking again. We have certainly no intention of disappearing. So our first objective would be to stabilize and to be sure that we make sure that the foundation is strong enough to build again. But we certainly have an absolute intention to stay in aviation. What COVID has certainly done for us is to probably accelerate our thinking and to accelerate the speed at which we will have to move. The digital offerings that we started to develop 2 years ago are well-founded and are already progressing, so we will certainly continue with those. And we'd love to be able to generate a new customer base with SME, right-sized, right-fit, right-priced TOC offerings in the future. And as you would have seen, we have a fundamental passion for digital design cycle, life cycle management, and so forth. And then on the other hand, from a manufacturing point of view, we definitely have a plan to make a stronger effort to diversify, to utilize the investments that is already made in capital equipment, in processes, in quality systems, and of course in the people, to be able to touch in peripheral industries. I'm thinking specifically in South African context of the transport domain and capital equipment manufacturing domain. The medical domain is very interesting, maybe more from a digital management and certification point of view. So yes, the answer is we're going to stick around, and we're going to really be I would say, agile in our approach of what to grow next and what to pursue next. But we definitely completely focused on making it a success.
Great, thank you. I will let Philip conclude this webinar.
What can I say? I probably have less esteem for consultants than any of you listening to me. So I love it when it's not a consultant speaking and it's somebody who's actually done it. And I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. As I say, it was a great pleasure for me to be able to start this series of people using the theory of constraints with these strange people down there in South Africa, because it's got into their DNA. I think you can feel it, and they know how to do it. They know how to explain it. And so just let me repeat what I said a few minutes ago. If you have the great opportunity of being within their travel zone, go and see it better than watching it on your screen. And you can only be seduced by what they've done and what they're doing, because it's just fascinating. It all seems fairly obvious to them, but yet, as you know, they are Martians in some ways, aren't they? Because this is not common. They didn't even mention that, as far as I know, they have the world record. I mean, they're world class in nearly everything they do. But they even have, these 700 people have the world record, to the best of my knowledge, in terms of performance in new product development. Not only are they very fast, but they're basically finishing every single new product development on time. And the last time I saw the figures, it was, I believe, 98% of new product development finished on time. That is, as far as I know, a record. I mean, with real clients, right, with the Airbuses and Boeings and stuff, clients changing their mind at the last moment, they still finished all on time. So they just do these very strange things all the time, and it was a pleasure for me to get them to try and explain what they're doing to you all. Okay, so as was pointed out, don't hesitate to get in contact with them if you're in that part of the world, because they love talking about it also, and they'll explain it all to you. Okay, the slides of the entire presentation are available just as this conference ends, and if you click on the wrong button, you will always find all the slides on the Marris Consulting website. A video will be uploaded of this if you want to get other people to listen in. It will, in a few days' time, less than a week, you go back to the same page you registered on and you'll find a recording of this webinar. Okay, so mille merci, 1,000 thanks from me to Aerosud for spending some time getting their webinar together and doing such a good job of it. And thank you, all of you, for listening from throughout the world and stuff. I see that nearly everybody stayed to the end, which is probably a good sign. Take care, and I'll finish off with what Jeff said. Just do it. Bye-bye.